All right, welcome back to Blah, Blah, Blah. Thank you, studio audience. We're continuing with our new technology episode. And our next topic is Remember When.
Ah, yes.
Back in the days before iPhones, iPods, Twitter, and GPS, we had different times. Now, you know, speaking of smartphones and iPhones and cell phones, the evolution going backwards now, they're getting tinier and tinier. And remember, before we had cell phones, we had car phones, and they were about the size of regular home phones. And then if you see some movies from like the early 90s or late 90s, you see the like funny looking.
Big World War II walkie-talkie size phones.
It's always. Do you remember your first cell phone?
I still have my old cell phone. I actually carry it with me. And hello. So yeah, this is an example of my old cell phone.
You can put it right here. That's a nice prop. That was not a setup, by the way. That was totally impromptu. But my favorite thing to talk about in terms of remembering when, for you youngsters out there that don't remember television before remote controls, right, was in my house, it was always my dad trying to get the picture perfect. And back then, you had to mess with the knob, and you had to twist it, and sometimes the handle would literally, if you twisted it some, it would be a better picture, but then you had to hold it there. So you get a piece of tape out, and you'd literally tape, but it never worked because you couldn't get the exact amount of pressure to get that picture.
Right.
What were some of the other things you had to do with television to make it?
Well, you had to go up to the rabbit ears and adjust them, and then while you're adjusting it, you're touching it, and you become part of the antenna. Okay, so the picture's good until you let go.
Right.
So one poor slob had to be the guy who stood up by the TV holding it while everyone else watched the show, and you're like, I can't see it from here.
Right. Did that ever happen to you, Chris?
Oh, constantly. My dad. I would like to go up to the TV and then turn the channels like 100 miles an hour. And then my dad would, what the hell are you doing? And then he would actually make us hold the antenna and stand like this. Of course, that being short is nothing. Never got any good reception. But he would always
tell us about the time that you twisted the channel thing and something happened. Did it come off or something like that?
Oh, with the pliers?
Well, no. Before that, you twisted it and it turned around and said, "Oops, Dad." So.
Oh yeah, I was twisting it really fast, 100 miles an hour, and oh shoot, it broke. Sorry, Dad. How do we do this? We plug it back in and.
Yeah.
But Rob, what do you have to do when that thing, the channel changer comes off? What do you have to do to change channels?
Oh, you mean get the various devices out to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. But you want to make sure that, well, just to be careful, make sure it has rubber. Can you get electrocuted doing that?
Maybe.
Probably.
Never happened to me.
Well, anyway, maybe I was just, conductive. But it was a pain. This was a day that we don't want to go back to.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about using pliers.
Yeah,
pliers.
You literally had to take the pliers, remember this, and stick them in there and click, click, click. That's when you knew it was time to get a new TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it would still take months. The pliers would be sitting on the TV
And then I would turn the plier real fast.
Yeah.
And then that piece that was inside with the pliers was usually made out of plastic. So after a couple of applications, it started getting stripped. So that's when you had to get the new TV.
Yeah.
And then my dad shoving his foot through
Elvis.
I remember I was babysitting for a family. They had a TV with a remote. But you know how people used to call remotes clickers? I found out why. The TV actually had a thing. It responded to sound. And the clicker would make a clicking noise. And the channel changer, the TV would go ka-chunk. And every time you hit it, it would go ka-chunk, ka-chunk.
Yep.
And that was a clicker.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah, it's not like you could choose the channel you wanted to go to. You had to go through each channel to get to the one that you wanted. But there were only 9 channels, so it didn't matter.
Real quick on...
I had 4 in my house.
Before CDs, we had...
Vinyl LPs.
Final.
And between those, we had...
Cassettes. Yeah.
And then before that, we had
The vinyl
the
LP.
vinyl LPs. And what were some of the things that made that were different from using CDs?
Well, you couldn't just jump to wherever you wanted to, and you had to kind of wait for a song to play out, or you could take the but you're going to mess up the record if you did it. Yeah, take the needle and skip it.
What happens if you take the needle and try to move to a different song? You might...
Scratch it. Yes. I didn't allow that. Once the record was started, all bets were off. It was like kind of a NASA type operation. We're going to the moon. We're going to listen to the Starn record, whether you like it or not.
See, that's
front to back.
It changes the way we listen to music because we would listen to a whole side.
Yeah.
I was a chronic needle bumper. I would.
Oh,
I would always try to change the needle, and I'd always, and you had that little thing that would hook around one of the vinyls that would hold it up, and then the record would stop, and then you could program it would come back down.
The next record would drop.
Yeah,
right?
well, mine would always like fall to the side, and then the needles would scratch and skip, and I went through a lot of records when I was growing up.
Now, Jack, if somebody had messed with your record and made a scratch in it, and it would repeat the same 5 seconds or 6 seconds or whatever it was in the song, what could you do to fix it? The answer is
Nothing.
absolutely nothing.
You could put a penny on.
A friend
top
of mine, I wanted to have a bunch of Beatles songs, and of course, buying the record was not an option. So I just taped his record, and his White Album had a skip in "I Will." And for a while, I thought the song went "Never forever, never forever, never forever."
You thought that's the way it
Yeah,
went.
I thought this song sucks.
Yeah, tell Paul McCartney that.
Okay, what did we left at? We talked about records. We talked about TVs.
The telephone,
The telephone.
old telephone, corded
Yeah.
telephones.
Corded telephones.
Yeah.
What were the problems? Oh, they'd always get.
You'd always
Bundled
knock
up.
stuff over.
Bundle stuff.
You couldn't go too far, and you'd have the phone, and you couldn't walk too far because that cord
Yeah.
would be very limited to where you.
Also, long distance calls. You had to really. Every call cost money.
Yeah.
You didn't have a certain amount of minutes for your cell phone that you could use up to.
Yeah.
Every time you made every time you talked to grandma, you had an excuse to get off the phone if you needed it.
My grandma was dead, so it didn't matter.
You can't get a better excuse than that.
yeah. Sorry you didn't call her.
All right, we are we're running out of time in this segment, but we're gonna do a couple things and come back with the last part of this show, which is going to be assessing your technology quotient. Before that, we are going to have first another somewhat funny article written by Jorge that you will not be reading in The Onion, as followed by a performance by Chris and myself doing a Beatles song.
Groovy.
I'm Only Sleeping. And then we
been through
are
the whole
going to see Chris and myself again on the next
Fred and
segment
Sully.
of Observations with Sully and Fred. You'll get it when you see it.
We don't get it.
And then we'll be back. So stay tuned.
We'll be back in 2 and 2.